Hi, and welcome to The Treatment Forum, a podcast about the art of the pitch. This series demystifies the treatment process for commercial directors and photographers by interviewing industry pros, from agency creatives, producers, and brand strategists to established directors and treatment writers. I'm Christina Archer, your host. I'm a director, photographer, and educator. I'm fascinated by the intersection of art and commerce, how ideas traverse from the intangible to the tangible, and how culture shapes advertising and advertising shapes human behavior. This podcast was inspired by winningdirectortreatments.com, a course I created to mentor underrepresented talent. It's designed to empower directors to master their pitches and win their dream jobs. Find out more and enroll on commercialdirectingfilmschool.com. My goal is for these conversations to be a resource, fostering an open dialogue and creating transparency in our industry. Today's episode interviews Addhemar Sierralta, who is a multicultural creative director with a decade of experience working with brands like McDonald's, Jim Beam, and Hornitos. Addhemar and I have worked together in the past when he was at Havas in Chicago, and he's now based in Miami, where he started his own design studio called Studio Called Ademo. We talk about his experience working from the agency side, pitching directors to clients, and recently being on the other side where he's actually designing treatment decks for branding content series and directors. His take on a winning treatment is when the synergy radiates off the page, and you can feel like the director is dreaming along with him. I really enjoyed our chat, and he dropped so many insights. I hope you enjoy this episode with Addhemar. Today on the Treatment Forum, I have creative director, multicultural creative director, Addhemar Sierralta, also goes by Adam, and we met a long time ago, and when I was in Chicago, and we were both in Chicago, and you were at Havas, Chicago, and we may or may not have been working on a tobacco client.
May or may not.
And since then, you have been freelancing, and now you're based in Miami. So congrats on all of that. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh my God, thank you so much for having me. It's so fun. And we haven't, we've obviously worked a couple years ago on that project and a couple more. But yeah, it's great to catch up with you and just hang out and chat treatments and anything else. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we reconnected. I mean, there is some beauty in LinkedIn. Like you can find people from such a long time, and I just really love the resource because you can just track where people go. And yeah, we go pre-pandemic. We go way back.
Yeah, back in the day.
Yeah, but you've been just killing it. You also launched your own new studio called Ademo, and let's dive in. I mean, I learned something new about your experience with treatments, but we can get to that in a little bit. But yeah, let's talk about, from your agency side experience, when you are working on a project, from your experience, how long does it typically take for you to kind of go into rounds of pitching to clients until they sort of sign off and they're like, we are ready to find our production partner or ready to find our director or photographer, go find them. How many months is that typically for you where you're working on a concept?
Well, in my experience from my agency time, it typically was a couple of months. And for context, we were working on, or I was working mostly on big kind of CPG, craft and Lunchables, big brands that had different types of budgets for different types of verticals. So in those types, we could see some campaigns coming in that either we had already done from a year prior or based on other clients that we already had. And so we could kind of go into from creative development, I would say 2 or 3 months. Every assignment is different, and then certain budgets, and if it went more social, those timelines would dramatically change. It could be anywhere from 3 weeks, which I've also done, from creative development to post production 3 weeks straight. So those are kind of ones where you would jump in. But if if we had some more of that time, that campaign time, and I would say a handful of rounds across a couple of months would be pretty standard.
Yeah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. when you're sort of seeking production partners, you lean pretty heavily on your like producer and your EPs to kind of gather those resources because I'm sure like you don't probably have the time to go searching. Or is there sometimes top of mind like, oh, I remember this person that sent me something that I've always wanted to work with? Like, is it kind of a mix of like, oh, I want to try to throw a familiar name that I'm thinking I have in mind? Like, do you ever sort of ask the producer specifically to reach out to somebody that you feel like would be right for it?
Sometimes I would say, I mean, we definitely rely heavily on producers, not only for helping us find director partners, but in general, you know, like once they're valued allies from the very beginning, and
Mhm.
without them, you know, we wouldn't be able to do anything near what we've kind of already sold. We definitely lean on them every now and then, or throughout the course of my career. There has been moments, you know, whether a partner or somebody else on the team, or I have had somebody that, I mean, like so and so would be amazing, or even a studio, or even using a references. So there's definitely, I mean, the best producer relationships, production department, creative department relationships I've had have been the ones that have been like very collaborative on both ends. You know, so they are the experts in making so many things happen and come to life. So yeah, I definitely leaned on them, and whenever possible, you know, I had a reference or something that I felt strongly about, I would definitely throw it in there, you know, if it made sense, you know, within what we're talking about. You know, there's obviously not throwing out a director that's like, you know,
Just
doesn't make
hard.
sense,
Yeah.
right? You know, I'm
You're
like,
getting food or something. Yeah. Yeah. That okay. Yeah, yeah. Totally. And so so you basically get like a list of links of reels, right? I think from your and you have to dissect it with your team. Like what's that process like? Like are you I mean, I feel like it's a pretty long list sometimes and
yeah.
what are you looking for and what is like, oh, this is interesting, this stands out. Like how do you sort of curate and decipher the three voices that are sort of going to go forward and triple bid with you? Like, what do you see in those reels that kind of excites you?
Ooh. Um, it could be anything, honestly. I mean, I think there's like
Yeah.
the key things being, it could be just as simple as like the mood, you know, the tone and voice, something like that. And that could be a couple keyframes, or it could be a 4 page, you know, like deep dive. But I would say of the general ones, it would be that type of like mood or POV. Casting is something that like, you know, always stands out independent of the other sections. You know, I think a casting can stand on its own, but then also mixing it in with other parts. But that's something I kind of always look forward to. Those two would be the same, the main ones. But in terms of holistically, I'm not really, I go into it not really sure what I mean. Like I know that sometimes they'll have some script alts, or they'll have bonus ideas, or they'll go deep into art departments. So it's what excites me the most is knowing that there are things that, you know, are go-tos that like are the backbone of any treatment, and figuring out what that mix is that the director is putting forward, and then what those levels are for those. So it could be two of the classic ones, or it could be I've gotten some director treatments that had no sections, and it was like 2-3 pages, but it was like beautifully and thoughtfully crafted, you know, like letter, you know, like where I had 20-30 page, you know, more pre-pro book style. So
Yeah.
it's hard. There's a range where it's there are some wild treatments out there, some brutally simple ones, and yeah, it could be anywhere.
I like that. Well, actually, yeah, and that's really interesting because you're segueing into like the length, and that's definitely a question that I had. But I think even talking like pre-treatment, like before you get to that part, when you're just looking at links, because I think I would
Um,
imagine that you and your team like have to get aligned on three. Like, is there ever like, do you first kind of see if you guys pick the same people? Is that something? And then if there is crossover and if there's not, then you sort of have to all come together and like have your powwow and then from there go to the EP. So like does it ever happen where you guys choose the same people or is that actually kind of
mhm.
rare?
No,
Oh,
it
it
does
does.
happen.
Oh, so you're like
Yeah,
super
sorry.
aligned. You guys
I
are like
skipped.
in each other's minds. Okay. Okay.
No, totally. I mean, I've worked, especially if you worked with the same kind of partners or teams or producers
Hmm.
as well for a long enough time, we start getting into the same type of people. I remember doing and still kind of, I always do my own list, independent. If I'm working with a partner, eventually it's like you start like bringing in people together. So when I was working with partners, I had my short list, my partner had their short list, and then we would come together and then we'd pass that on if we had like a CD or an ECD or somebody above, or when we were the CDs, and we would go, to our producer. So eventually we would get more collective and get like a short list. Sometimes it would be very different, even at the level of like partner, like our visions could be different. As like as an art director back when I was like heavily in production and getting a lot of treatments, like I definitely reacted more to the visuals, and then my partner, we were very much in our lanes, and that's when we kind
Yeah.
of like we relied on producers and other creatives and account strategy to help us get in there. But typically, yeah, I would make my own list, and then eventually have 3 to 5 to then eventually work through the team to get and then we'd go into availabilities and things like that. So we could all align on three, and then none of them be available, which is a whole other thing.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Interesting. Yeah, well, so I because I know we're going like step by step and we can, but I do think so like the next step being kind of the creative call when, all right, you've like briefed these three people and now you're going to chat with them before the pitch. And obviously this is like all when you were mainly on the agency side. We can get
mhm,
to the other side too.
mhm,
Um, but I was thinking of just kind of that instinct of this sort of being like a like chemistry read in a way. And do you always like when after you get off those calls, do you kind of already have like a really good sense of like, oh, I like their personality or they get it like and what do you feel like is a successful type of those calls? Like are people throwing out ideas like in real time and it just feels like a good brainstorm session or where do you feel like because I mean, this is probably going to be listened by emerging directors that are kind of looking for guidance in this process.
mhm,
And, I think it's always really helpful to know, like, how do you conduct yourself in those moments, especially if people don't give good phone, like if they're like terrible at,
mhm.
and so from your perspective, like what's like really helpful for them to know on how to sort of approach the just the first creative call when you're sort of bouncing things off before the treatment started.
I like um, the most engaging is the part where it's the unintangible of what they're going to say, but the authenticity of whatever they're saying.
Hmm.
Whoever's on the other line, and that kind of goes into the. Excuse me 1 second, because my dog needs to get out of this room, or she will Shiba
Oh.
scream us to death. Um, yeah, sorry, I have a little
Is that
Shiba.
your work behind you, by the way? It's beautiful.
It is not. It's actually work from a friend of my partner's. So
Ooh,
yeah, thank
it's
you
so
so much.
beautiful. Super cool.
Um, thank you. Where were we? Sorry. Oh, so yeah, it would be advice for like emerging directors on that chemistry part. Yeah, it's the intangible of it. I think the mood of whatever you're saying is, if you, that's the hook to me. The emotional, like the part you got, like the make me believe whatever you're saying. It might not be on point with what we want. And a lot of times we don't even know. In those type of calls, that's where it starts, and like the reels are the part where you're seeing like what has been done, like technical capabilities, and like the team that director surrounds in that call. I don't think there's so much rules as it is on the creative side. I would say just like your authentic self in terms of whatever you're saying. If you want to chat about the narrative, if you want to throw out an idea, like I always responded more to um, the kind of natural approach that came from the other side. Like, not to say that it's structured very, on point, dotting every I. Meaning weren't also really helpful and great and super creative, but I think it's say what you want to say with meaning and with passion and with like confidence, whatever it is that you're saying, and the other side will pay attention even if they don't agree. Like at least you get across, and you have to be adaptable too. It is a chemistry meeting. It's like going on a date, professionally. So so there are parts where you might say something and it doesn't land, but then that's that human nature part of it too. It's like
Yeah.
how do you pitch yourself in the idea without giving too much away, not giving too little. But
Yeah. No, I mean, that's really helpful, I think. Just because people kind of get in their heads about it. And I think just being able to be your authentic self and, just speaking about this idea and how you can kind of like raise it up in the most, the strongest way. Um, yeah. So if we're going into the treatment process and we all come back, whether it's a week later or a day later. I
yeah.
mean, obviously, more time is always helpful. And I think you could see it in the treatment. But I mean, this is a very open-ended question, and I think you'd have a lot of insights on it. But what do you feel like makes a winning treatment? And winning, I don't even know if I
Mm.
like the word winning, but that is a strong treatment. Like, what are the key factors? And yeah, I'll leave it
Ooh,
open.
that's a hard one.
It's really a
I mean,
big
I had
question.
an idea. I had a thought that you would say something like you would ask me that. What would be the? I would say that the tr a winning treatment to me amplify not only like connects with what we're trying to do, but also takes that, amplifies it, plays with it a bit more, and gives it back to the other side, being like, I get what you want, and on top of that, and here it is, like we could totally do this and this, but we could also do, or like I want that excitement to come through.
Mhm.
So it's not like a lot of times what the results has been way different than what sold the idea to begin with in the best possible way. And that wouldn't have happened had there not been that extra page of like backstory to a character in a commercial that we hadn't gone that deep because we maybe didn't like, whether or not we wanted to, it was just we didn't, and somebody did, like that person or like that team, um directors, the production company, like those are the things that like are peeking behind walls that we hadn't thought of. That's the part to me that makes it winning, because it's like you're dreaming along with us and
Mhm.
adding to that, and I love that. Like that is way more important to me, to know that like not only are you gonna get what I want to do at this moment, but you're gonna collaborate with us. You're excited, like
Yeah.
that's gonna like that's contagious. So like get me excited about whatever you're saying, prove and give me a glimpse into how your brain works, and
Yeah.
that'll get me. That to me is winning. Whether it wins it in that moment or not, it might win the next one, or
Yeah.
like a year from now, or it stays with you, and then we come across, and I'm like, wow, that treatment was amazing, like hell yeah, it changed the way I thought about commercials or something, it's
Ah,
wild. It could be
yeah.
wild. It could like be a really good moment. So I don't know. I get really pumped about that type of moment. So I think that's what I want. I want to read that and be like, did you see what they were writing about the lighting? No one cares about the lighting. This person cares about the light, or whatever. Like
Yeah.
insert whatever very personal thing that might pop up. But yeah,
Yeah.
excitement to
Everything
me.
you said, that was like the best answer. I'm just thinking of all of the quotes I want to pull from this moment
Yeah,
because, like, dreaming with you, I mean, that is such a good way to put it, and just getting you inspired and like bringing life into the idea from a
yeah,
different perspective is all just so many beautiful ways to put it. And it just really talks about, yeah, the contagion of like inspiration and excitement and passion and how that can come through in a document. That is just the perfect way to really express it from your point of view. And maybe touching on how you were mentioning that, like, okay, maybe it doesn't win this one, and maybe you can touch on like maybe you have a favorite in mind, and but sometimes there's so many variables that maybe it doesn't go that direction of your favorite, and like how does that unfold like when you're presenting to a client and you're hoping that they trust you, that you feel like this is the person that's going to do bring this to life in a amazing way. Maybe it's like risky, maybe that person's like you, the client sees them as a risk, but you're like no, 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 they get it. Like how does that process go when you then have to kind of switch into pitch mode again, where you have to
Mm,
like, and this might be like from again from like when you necessarily weren't like freelancing now, but just kind of going back into that headspace of having to present artists as well and sort of like fight for them. I don't know, people say like, oh, we fought for you in there. I was like, what does that look like? Are you like, no, she's the best person for it? Like what does like fighting for somebody look like? I don't even know.
no, that's a great question. Also, thank you for that question because yeah, there's been it's tough. Like I'm like I'm trying to hone in on like an example, but I'm really honing in on that like a feeling of like having three like in the triple bits scenario, like having three great options, having loving them all being unique and standing on their own and hitting one or many things at the same time. But there's always one, that either, I at a personal level, at a team level, at a, like that could be creative team level or full team level that might have or has something that unfortunately doesn't get it, doesn't get the project or the goal or the win because it could be anything, it could look amazing, but it could be too indie looking or not enough experience. Like, or an experience is like, that's subjective too, like
Yeah.
years versus, like a specific medium versus who cares, like there's so many aspects of that. And sometimes it's the right call, but they're not ready to go that far yet, so there's a bit of like bracketing that happens where it's like this is where we want to go, but maybe that's something for next year, so there are strategic conversations that happen too, depending on the account and whether you're an AOR or if it's like a new client, all those details influence too. But
Can you explain what an AOR is?
oh,
So,
agency of record.
oh yeah, okay, okay, thank you.
AOR and like I'm going back to like yeah, like I worked on like craft accounts sometimes for like 4 or 5 years on and off, whether it be general market or not. So
Yeah.
that those were moments where you also like you might be bidding for a project, but then there's also six other verticals that you're potentially working on or collaborating on a bigger department level, like the difference between like a craft shredded cheese and like a craft salad dressing, for example, like
Yeah.
or like I worked on McDonald's before, and it was like cold beverages versus Big Mac. Like they're all mini clients. So sometimes there's some strategic conversations that happen where like like directors or treatments or things like might have found a better role in something that hasn't yet like solidified yet, so those things also kind of happen in the process of it. But it's hard, like in the meetings, it's also like we end up repitching, like you mentioned, in a way, and trying to um what would be the word? I guess kind of like suggest, not suggest, but so like I guess recommend
Yeah.
someone for, and you just have to like go through the motions again, and sometimes go into granular of going into like look at this spot. Obviously, it's not our product category, but look at this character, what they did. Look at the lighting in this and this. Like, is it right for the brand that specifically? Like, you have to potentially lead that witness like either very closely or not. And then it could still not land, and then you do your best, and then that they're the keepers of the brand, and you are also the collaborator and being on the agency side, and that doesn't mean it's the right call, but you fight for it as much as you can as a team or as a creative.
Yeah. Yeah, and so is it usually the creative director, or are you both, like the copywriter and the creative director, like going in and kind of both talking about the artist or the director in different ways? Is who kind of takes the client through? Or is it like the whole team? So
Hmm.
like then the producer chimes in and says, "Oh, and then their budget is at this or something." Yeah,
It's a
so
bit.
yeah, like when you actually present, is it like the whole team that sort of chimes in at different times about different areas of the treatment or the budget,
A
that
bit
type
of
of.
it, it could be a little bit of a mixed bag. There's been times where I've at a team level we've made a stand for something, or like at a like our director copywriter level, or it's been like everyone being like, "Ugh," like we've had like a meeting before the meeting to figure out how are we going to get XYZ clients to go with this one. Like we all understand it's going to be really hard. We better rock, like you know what I mean? Like you have ready that backup reel with the thing, like it could get war room style.
Oh,
Like, yeah, like,
interesting.
it
Literally
can,
like the Apple commercial, I feel like. You know the Apple commercial where like there's a team that like sells through like the round pizza box, and they did this like episodic series that were like 5 minute long commercials, and then you got like really invested in this like like fun it was like I forget what the
It's,
series is called.
I gotta
It's
look it up. It sounds super
it's
familiar,
so good.
but
And then they have like a part two where like the same team you come back, and it's commercial, but it's really like branded content. And then now it's like revolving around like one of them lost their laptops, and it's
oh
it's just
no.
this, like this team at this business, and they're this internal team that's like five like characters. And I think it started in the pandemic because they like kicked it off with like a Zoom, and they're like, okay, like we got to be ready. We're going to go in there and like we're going to pitch this thing. And then yeah, it's basically like an episodic like Apple commercial branded content series.
Exactly
So
right. Like I mean, there has been some times. I mean, that could happen at a very like I've definitely had moments with a partner or a couple partners. So yeah, that's been part of that's a fun part of the process too. Like figuring out the collective side of there's it goes through so many gates, or gatekeepers.
yeah.
It could like as an art director with my copywriter, I had to get it across, to my writer, and then to our creative director and our producers. So getting to that point, um, wrenches can still fall in from anywhere, but if there's heart for it, if it's enough people, I think it's typically measurable. It's not always the case. Some people don't like it doesn't make it past a certain gate, and it kind of that's where it goes. But that's kind of like the chance of anything. Like we were doing that through on our ideas. By the time we get to those, we're a little fried, we're a little tired. Our ideas has changed a lot too. So like circling back to the excitement part, like if we're excited by somebody and they've made us feel that is a powerful thing, and I think that's an important thing for us, or like the team to get across too. It's like taking our own advice and like talking through to the client, our clients, and getting them to like see that, but being open to also not seeing it, because that is also the other part of the collaboration, and there's so much more left to do. So it's tough. It's there's a lot that happens, and there's so many times that I can remember of like loving a director or a treatment or just the whole culture of a production house, and it not aligning, and then maybe not aligning more than a few times in a row, and it's really frustrating, for us too, because we'll find people that we want to work with, and it's even if we do everything we can, sometimes it's still there's somebody above or a couple of people, or it just doesn't align, things change, and yeah, so
And when you were talking about how your agency of record, and then there's also like sometimes there's like the main agency of record, and then there's like smaller like digital agencies or like PR, like you have to kind of in that sensibility, is there other agencies that you have to like check in with, or can it just be this is solely like your campaign and your decision, so you don't have to get like permission from like another agency to see if it aligns? Because I feel like in those cases where it's such a massive conglomerate and you
oof.
have multiple people working on one account, like does that ever come up, or is that like no, they like let you have your own, space kind of thing?
Mm. Sometimes it does come up, like you have
Oh,
um there's moments where you're sharing like what, like if you're on the agency or record side, for example, like a lot of examples of like the main, like the brand campaign, like the big one, like the integrated marketing campaigns, 5 year, 1 year, whatever, it might come from that side, but sometimes it comes from a different agency or it came from a different vertical and it affects. So there are times where, and independent of that too, there are times where there's a multiple agencies and partners that are working together, asset sharing, or if there's something that is happening on one vertical or one side of the industry for the same brand, that might be something that affects a process that's already been started. Like it might turn into an additional shoot because we need something here. So there are moments where whether partners or agencies want to be, sharing and being influenced and taking direction from other partners in moments where they might have not realized they were or had to, or way the other storms to navigate, as well. It's
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
moments for collaboration to like hopefully shine through and be like, all right, we're all on the same big
Yeah.
brand boat, right? Let's all play nice. Let's all share. I know we're all trying to get more,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
Let's all share and get
it's
along.
all we're all friends, right? We're all in the same industry, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes.
Interesting. Okay. And you mentioned this briefly, but there are cases where like a treatment or a director makes a big impact but doesn't get it, and so you remember that and you try to like go back to that person for. So it's not all lost. Like if somebody puts all their effort into something and you see that come through, you're gonna remember them. Like just like leaving that kind of just leaving that impact is something that stays with you, sounds like.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, just like any other creative reference out there, like if you're
Yeah.
building something and putting your vision into it, that has the power to, affect it like any beautiful movie or anything, like I've kept a lot of treatments or probably on a couple hard drives here and there.
Mm.
Like for one production company in particular, made the most beautiful, like little booklet for on set, like printed it different, like went all like
Oh,
completely things that like have
of the
shocked
treat
me.
of the
I'm sorry?
treatment or like a booklet of something else? Like,
No, actually, it was like the call sheet. This was already like we were
oh,
shooting on set, and it was
oh,
like
okay.
the director or the production company. I think it came from the director. Um, Created like instead of it being just a random little paper shoot, like stapled, which is fine, whatever.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
that was like I bring that up as an extension where I've also seen treatments that were beautifully crafted and like like they were pitched to me as if like the way I've sometimes pitched creative,
Mhm.
like either I've me and a partner or a collective, we've written a manifesto to sell a 30-second spot, that didn't
Yeah.
require a manifesto, but we can see that like this could be the start of something that even the client's not aware of, that could start a strategy. Those are
Wow.
things that those are things we look for as well on the treatment side of it too. Like it's like what can we do with this, or just it makes that much of an impression that it becomes a reference in its own right. Like I could reference something years later. Like I have like one of my favorite directors. I have no idea where this director is, what he's doing. I fell in love with all his commercials. He used to work at Anonymous, like maybe like 10, 15 years ago. I'm gonna butcher
Mhm.
his name, but his name is Frederick Planchon. But I remember like constantly getting his reel or coming across it, and then eventually I just kept going to his reel because it was like beautiful work. Like it wouldn't like I sometimes wanted to work with him and would serve him up, in those instances where like, hey, can we talk? Is this person, does he even, okay. You're like, I don't know, like here we are, like can we talk to him?
Yeah.
Yeah, does he know we're alive? Would you care? Or she, like whoever. But
Yeah.
in this case, Frederick, I think his name is Frederick, but I bring him up because it's like I still remember his like maybe badly pronounced name that I just said. Sorry if he hears this, but yeah, those are that's something that became an amazing reference, and some treatments I know that like I saved knowing that like it was a beautiful piece of work, so I wanted to save it, and it's part of
Yeah.
like the project. We wouldn't get to what we did, and sometimes it's the most beautiful representation of it, pure and creative, without like supers and legal and like voiceovers and shadow shoots and stuff, like it's
Yeah.
it's like and that's exciting because that's whether it's an ad or a campaign or whatever, you can still
Yeah.
make something amazing and beautiful and emotive and um you know full.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm realizing it's already like how much more time do you have? I just like we get into it so easily.
And
Um
I ramble too, like, and I go
no,
all over the
do you have
place.
like 10 more
I
minutes? Could we go over or and if you don't, no worries.
I have a meeting in 14 minutes, so we can go to
Okay,
10.
you do. Okay.
Yeah,
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 that's
but
what
it's a catch up meeting. It's fine. Like,
okay. No, I don't
so
want to interrupt.
no. Let's
I
keep
was
going.
gonna try to pivot a little bit, but I thought of one question that I think would be really cool to ask you specifically, and this can kind of briefly maybe get into the fact that the audience that's listening that Addhemar has moved into also like writing treatments on for and kind of on the other side. But you know what I was thinking is that just from coming from like your like multicultural standpoint and being in Miami, like such a melting pot, but um that there's a lot that has changed like since the pandemic, like free the bid and being able to like bring like diversity into the bidding process. And have you seen that come through at all? Or, have you kind of been aware of that and just kind of making sure that the bidding pool is diverse? Or do you feel like there's still a lot of work that needs to happen there to be able to bring more underrepresented talent into the mix of campaigns? Like, have you seen any progress there?
I've seen some progress. I definitely feel like there's way more progress to be made.
Yeah.
I work remotely, so it's harder for me to like whatever opportunities I get. Sometimes I don't see like the who else is in the mix or could be in the mix, and so that's something that like on my end I personally miss from being the opportunity to be whether in a shared space, whether that's an office or whatever that so it's harder for me to see that online in my own experience, like on LinkedIn or other platforms, for example. I've seen more of it. I've seen people in LinkedIn from other countries, also like not just nationally, make calls for talents and points of view from different, specifically calling it out on whatever that like post might be. So I've seen that, but knowing how much work is still to be done, I want to see more of it. I'm like, I don't need to see, uh, I need to see more of it because it's like, I don't believe that it's enough, and there's a long way to go on across so many other things. So I would say keep it coming, but it's great to see something like without looking for it specifically. I
Yeah.
think that would be it if I. But that's a great question. I I feel better, but it's very specific to um, like I'd like to see it from other places and other lenses. Right now, I'm very specific to like South Florida, and
Yeah.
um, so
Totally. Yeah, yeah, it feels like we made a few big steps and then I feel like everything always gets quiet for like there's like a big movement and then it kind of reverts back for a little bit and then like I think like that's where we are. I think it's not as present because maybe like every single DEI role that I know of that people were trying to progress like because of all of the layoffs recently, like that whole section of
mhm.
companies is just kind of like being like swept under the rug because they're trying to, I mean, we could go into AI. That's its own thing. We'd even touch that.
Yeah,
But I want to be respectful of your time and I don't want to creep you up too close to your other meetings. So I just want to thank you so much for taking the time and
yeah. Thank
reconnecting.
you.
This has been so cool. I mean, you look great. You look the
Thank
same.
you. You as well.
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna say that. Yeah, and your energy is so like great and light, and like I hope to get another chance to work together at some
Oh my
point.
God,
Um,
yes.
Yeah, like you were just, yeah, you're just like so like such a, I just everything you're saying about the passion and bringing excitement into a project is exactly what I thrive off of. So
Right
it's just
on.
like I love like having these conversations because it really helps me connect directly with the creatives as opposed to like the business of everything getting in the way of like, oh, we have to present and we have to do these things. But when I get to like talk to you directly, it just reminds me how much I love this process of collaboration and like seeing an idea from, where you left it off, which was months, in the making, but then and then where we take it is like just the juicy, exciting part for me. So yeah, so great to reconnect. And where can listeners find you and find your work and follow you, reach out? What's the best way to get in touch with you if
Oh,
they
well,
wanted to check out your work?
my website is studioademo.com.
Awesome.
And yeah, on Instagram, just at Addhemar, Addhemar.
You
Yeah.
got at Addemar? Wow, you got
Yeah, because it's so weird.
whoa.
And I say weird in the best way. Like everyone's like, it's not weird, it's cool. And I'm like, no, but weird can be cool.
There's
But
only
yeah,
one, which is you.
no, but not only that, like my name is so it's unique and it has an extra D on top of already like so it's a unique version of a unique name. So
Oh, it does.
it's like super meta. So I got like at Addhemar for everything. Like I got Instagram.
That's sick.
I think my dad beat me on one because I'm a junior, so that's the
Oh,
only thing I'm still mad about it because he's like 30 years older than me or 40, and he took one of my platforms, but all the other ones I
wow,
got
that
on
is
like really
really cool.
quick. So but
Just
yeah,
to
no
have your
one's got
first name be that's great.
yeah, feels very Madonna-ish, but
Yeah.
not that I can ever,
Oh, come on.
but
We're
it's
going there. We're going there. Yeah. Well,
but
yeah, we need to have a part two to hear about the other
I'd
side,
love
but we
to.
will have to continue this conversation. But thank you so much again,
Thank you
and
so
we
much for
will
having
chat
me.
very soon. And thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Congrats again on
Great.
the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Treatment Forum. Share this with anyone you think could find these insightful conversations useful to growing their career. Please subscribe and write a review to help this resource get into the ears of the right people. If you are interested in learning more about mastering your pitches, visit winningdirectortreatments.com, where I offer a free consult to answer any questions about the course. You can reach me directly on my website and Instagram at archerstudio.co. Excelling at your craft is just the first step, but your success lies in your ability to clearly and succinctly articulate your vision.